Apologies if this seems naive, but it's been puzzling me. In earthly religions, gods of air and water are often portrayed as the offspring of fire and earth creations, while fire and earth are the creators. Does this mean that air and water are secondary to fire and earth? Or is this just a particular case of earthly reality? Or is that not the case at all, and are all four elements, in fact, equal? Or perhaps lineage does not imply dependence or subordination, or does it? Here, it depends on the system. First of all, you've absolutely correctly observed that in nearly all mythologies grounded in elemental principles, those that have a cosmology, and often an eschatology, connected to the elements, fire and earth are described as the parent elements, while water and air are presented as the derivative ones. And this is indeed the case. Likewise, nearly all myths tell of how the children eventually overthrow their parents. And that too is absolutely true. And across many different myths, there emerges the idea that the elemental forces and the gods who embody them are not the ones who originally shaped reality or created civilizations. More often, these are their descendants, the third or even fourth generation. Elemental gods are, as a rule, essentially elemental titans, and among them there were no conflicts. At the level on which they exist, they are indeed all equal. But their descendants establish hierarchies based on entirely different principles, and it is they who become the architects of civilization, building it upon the hierarchy they have claimed or conquered for themselves. So your observation is absolutely correct, and your conclusions are entirely accurate. Another matter is that you need to extend them a little further. In other words, mythology, any ancient mythology, typically speaks of different generations of gods. And it also shows us that the gods we now recognize as the organizers, the ones who govern and control a given civilization, are not the original, primordial deities. As a rule, never. Because under the conditions in which those very first gods existed, the question of building a civilization, or of forming any kind of cult structures, did not arise at all. They are not even aware that we exist here as some kind of civilization, or that we represent anything at all. These are forces that exist beyond space and time. Yet in mythological descriptions, in accounts of the activity of various pantheons, they must be included and always appear as primordial forces, the very forces from which everything originated. Because their descendants, the architect gods, cannot be anything other than what their progenitors are. And this, in turn, explains why our gods are the way they are. When we ask this, we look to their origin, the elements. I have tried to elaborate on this description in great detail in the book Runes and Gods, which is already available for purchase. If this topic interests you, I would direct you to this book. Try examining what is described there using the example of the Scandinavian pantheon.